Commander Jake Martinez had been in space for 15 years, but nothing prepared him for what he saw that day. The USS Valiant cut through the darkness toward Kepler 442b, a colony world where 3,000 humans had made their home. The distress signal had stopped 3 hours ago. Now there was only silence. "How long until we reach the colony?" Jake asked. Lieutenant Sophie Davis checked her screen. 20 minutes, sir." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. In his experience, silence was worse than screams. Screams meant people were still alive to make noise. Silence meant something had already finished its work. The Valiant moved into orbit around the green and blue planet. Below them, the colony should have been buzzing with activity. Instead, the sensors showed nothing. No power signatures. No communication signals. No life signs. "Take us down," Jake ordered. The ship descended through the atmosphere. The colony came into view, a cluster of white buildings near a river. Everything looked normal from above. The structures were intact. The solar panels gleamed in the sunlight. But as they got closer, Jake saw the truth. The streets were empty, no people. No movement, nothing. Sophie landed the ship near the main administrative building. Jake gathered his team of 12 soldiers and scientists. Dr. Leonard Hayes, a thin man with gray hair, carried his medical scanner. He had seen war zones and plagues, but his hands shook as he checked his equipment. "Stay alert," Jake told his team. "We don't know what we're walking into." They stepped out into the colony. The air was clean and fresh. Birds sang in the trees that the colonists had planted, but there were no humans. Jake led his team through the empty streets. They checked homes, offices, and the central hub. Everywhere they looked, they found the same thing. Empty rooms, meals half-eaten on tables, computers still running. But no people. Dr. Hayes scanned everything with his instruments. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "There's no sign of violence. No blood, no weapons fire, no bodies. It's like everyone just vanished." Jake examined a home where a family had lived. Toys were scattered on the floor. A cup of coffee sat on the kitchen counter, still warm to the touch. Whoever had been here had left suddenly, but not in panic. There were no signs of a struggle. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Sergeant Billy Cooper from the communications center. Jake rushed over. Billy pointed at the main computer terminal. The last message received by the colony was still on the screen. It was in a language Jake didn't recognize, full of strange symbols and patterns, but the computer had translated it automatically. The message was simple and cold. "Species classification human. Status unauthorized expansion into regulated sector. Action, collection for evaluation. Authority, Zephyr Collective Galactic Council Enforcement Division." Jake read it 3 times. Each time his anger grew hotter. "They took them," he said quietly. "Someone took our people." Dr. Hayes looked pale. "The Zephyr Collective? I've heard rumors about them. They're supposed to be one of the major powers in this part of the galaxy, but we've never made contact with them." "Well, they made contact with us," Jake said, "and they took 3,000 of our people." The team spent 6 more hours searching the colony. They found the same evidence everywhere. People had been going about their daily lives when something had happened. No warning, no chance to fight back, just gone. Jake recorded everything. He took videos and photos. He collected the translated message. Then he ordered his team back to the ship. As the Valiant lifted off from the planet, he looked down at the empty colony below. 3,000 people had lived there. Now it was a ghost town. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. Jake sent his report ahead at faster than light speed. By the time the Valiant arrived home, the entire human government was in emergency session. Captain Nicole Grant commanded Earth's defense fleet from the orbital station above the planet. She was a tall woman with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. When Jake arrived to brief her in person, she listened without interrupting. Then she played him the message that had arrived from the Zephyr Collective the day before. The alien who appeared on the screen looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. Its skin was covered in blue scales and its eyes were large and golden. It spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. Species designation, human. You have been found in violation of Galactic Council territorial regulations. Your expansion into Sector 774 was unauthorized. The biological samples collected from your colony world will be studied. Following evaluation, your species will be assigned a compliance rating. Depending on this rating, you will either be restricted to your home system or scheduled for removal. You have no standing to appeal this decision. Comply with all future directives from the Galactic Council. This message requires no response. Jake felt his hands curl into fists. Biological samples? They're calling our people biological samples? Nicole's face was hard as stone. The President and the Military Council have been debating for 2 days. Some want to try diplomacy, some want to send a rescue mission, but we don't even know where they took our people. What do you think we should do? Jake asked. Nicole turned to look at Earth below them, the blue and white planet where humanity had been born. I think we should show them what happens when you steal from humans. Our people aren't samples. They're not specimens. They're citizens and their family. And nobody takes our family. Over the next week, things moved fast. President Helen Morrison addressed the world. She was a strong leader who had guided humanity through tough times before, but even she looked shaken as she stood before the cameras. My fellow humans, she said, we face a crisis unlike any in our history. A powerful alien civilization has taken 3,000 of our people. They claim we broke rules we never knew existed. They claim authority over us that we never granted. They treat our citizens like laboratory animals. This is unacceptable. She paused and her voice grew harder. We will send one message to this Zephyr Collective. We demand the immediate and safe return of all our people. They have 72 hours to comply. If they refuse, they will learn that humanity does not accept threats. They will learn that we protect our own, and they will learn that there are consequences for crossing the line. The message was sent through every communication channel humanity possessed. It was broadcast on radio waves, laser communications, and quantum-entangled transmitters. It went out to every corner of space that humans had explored. The response came exactly 72 hours later. It was the same bird-lizard alien on the screen. Its expression had not changed. Its voice was still flat and cold, negative. Your demands are rejected. You have no authority to make demands of the Galactic Council. The collected samples will not be returned. Accept your assigned status. Any military action will be met with overwhelming force. Your species lacks the capability to challenge Council authority. This conversation is concluded. The transmission ended. In the command center, silence fell. Then President Morrison stood up. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. General Paul Richardson, she said, open the black site files. Show them what we've been building. Show them what happens when you push humans too far. General Richardson was an old soldier with white hair and scars on his face. He had fought in 3 wars and never lost his nerve. He nodded once and turned to his staff. Activate all classified military programs. I want every weapon, every ship, and every soldier ready to deploy. We're going to teach the galaxy a lesson it will never forget. Jake stood with Nicole and watched as the preparations began. Ships that had been hidden beyond Pluto started moving toward Earth. Weapons that had been locked away in secret facilities were brought online. Scientists and soldiers who had been working on classified projects for years finally saw their work put to use. What kind of weapons are we talking about? Jake asked. Nicole's smile was cold and sharp. The kind we promised we'd never use. The kind that the old peace treaties banned. The kind that we built anyway, just in case. Because humans learned a long time ago that peace is good, but being able to defend yourself is better. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's demands. They had dismissed Earth as a minor species with no real power. They had taken human citizens and treated them like property. They thought humans would accept their fate and submit to their rules. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The galaxy had crossed humanity's line. Now they would face consequences beyond their imagination. The war room deep beneath Geneva was built to survive anything. Nuclear strikes, asteroid impacts, even the collapse of civilization itself. Now it held the people who would decide humanity's response to an alien threat. President Helen Morrison sat at the head of the table, surrounded by generals, scientists, and intelligence officers. General Paul Richardson spread a holographic map across the table. It showed human space, the nearby alien territories, and the estimated location of the Zephyr Collective's main systems. Red markers indicated their military strength. There were a lot of red markers. They outnumber us 20-1 in ships, Paul said bluntly. Their shields are better. Their weapons have longer range. In a straight fight, we lose. Then we don't fight straight, Helen said. She looked around the table. What do we have that they don't know about? Admiral Kevin Brooks leaned forward. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. Everything, Madam President. They've been watching us for maybe 50 years at most. They think they know what we're capable of. They're wrong. He activated another display. This one showed ships that looked nothing like the standard human vessels. They were smaller, angular, covered in strange panels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Wraith-class stealth frigates, Kevin continued. We've been building them in secret shipyards beyond Neptune for 10 years. 100 ships, each one invisible to conventional sensors. They use quantum stealth technology that we developed from theoretical physics. As far as we know, no other species has figured it out yet. Dr. Patricia Cole, a woman with red hair and sharp green eyes, brought up more displays. The stealth ships are just the beginning. We have nanite swarms that can disassemble enemy vessels at the molecular level, kinetic impactors that can crack planets, quantum displacement bombs that erase matter from existence, and neural disruption fields that can shut down organic brains from a distance. We held all of this back during peacetime, Helen said. It was not a question. Yes, ma'am, Patricia confirmed. Every major species in the galaxy signed the Preservation Accords 50 years ago. They agreed to limit weapons development, to avoid creating truly devastating technology. We never signed. We smiled, we traded, we played nice. But we kept building. Because humans remember what happens when you're not ready for war. Jake Martinez and Nicole Grant attended the meeting as observers. They had seen the empty colony. They understood what was at stake. Jake watched the displays showing humanity's secret arsenal and felt a cold satisfaction. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. What's the plan? Helen asked. Paul pulled up a tactical overview. We hit them fast and hard. Not their military fleets, not yet. We go after their infrastructure, their shipyards, their supply depots, their communication hubs. We want them to know that nowhere is safe, that every asset they have is vulnerable. And when they retaliate, someone asked, they will, Paul agreed. But they'll be doing it blind, confused, and scared. We're not trying to conquer them. We're teaching them a lesson. Cross humanity, and you pay a price you can't afford. The plan was approved. Within 24 hours, the secret fleet began to move. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Perry commanded the first strike force. She stood on the bridge of the USS Phantom, one of the Wraith-class ships. Around her, 10 more stealth frigates hung in space, invisible to anyone watching. All ships report ready, her tactical officer said. Lisa checked their target one more time. Tertius 9, a Zephyr mining colony that produced the rare metals used in their ship construction. It was defended by 30 warships, a force that would normally be impossible for 11 human ships to challenge. Normally. Execute attack plan, Lisa ordered. The human ships moved forward, still cloaked. They passed through the outer detection grid without triggering any alarms. The Zephyr sensor swept right over them, finding nothing. Lisa watched the enemy fleet on her screen. The alien ships hung in space, unaware of the danger closing in on them. Release the swarms, Lisa said quietly. From each human ship, clouds of tiny objects emerged. They looked like dust, like debris, like nothing important. But each speck was a hunter-killer drone, packed with enough antimatter to destroy a building. Millions of them spread out through space, forming an invisible net around the Zephyr fleet. The enemy ships finally detected something was wrong. Their sensors picked up strange readings, power signatures where nothing should be. But by then it was too late. Detonate, Lisa ordered. The swarms activated simultaneously. Using quantum tunneling technology, they bypassed the enemy shields and materialized inside the Zephyr ships. For one brief moment, millions of tiny antimatter charges sat in the corridors, engine rooms, and command centers of 30 alien warships. Then they exploded. Space lit up with fire. The Zephyr ships didn't just explode. They came apart from the inside, their hulls peeling open like flowers blooming in fast motion. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal systems detonated in chain reactions. In less than 4 minutes, 30 alien warships were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Lisa watched her screen go dark as the enemy fleet ceased to exist. She felt no joy, no satisfaction, just cold determination. Proceed to secondary targets. Let's hit their mining facilities. Similar attacks happened across 12 star systems. Human strike forces appeared without warning, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Zephyr Collective scrambled to respond, but they were fighting an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't catch. Captain Ryan Foster led another attack on a Zephyr supply depot. His team didn't destroy it completely. Instead, they deployed self-replicating nanites programmed to lie dormant in the metal structure. The nanites might activate in a day, a week, a month, or never, but now every ship that docked there, every piece of equipment that passed through, carried the possibility of catastrophic failure. The goal is fear, Ryan explained to his crew. We want them afraid of their own infrastructure, afraid that their ships might fall apart mid-flight, afraid that their weapons might explode in their hands. Fear is a better weapon than any bomb. Commander Alex Turner took a different approach. He was a specialist in electronic warfare, and his target was the Galactic Communication Network. His team of hackers, led by a civilian genius named Craig Peterson, cracked the alien encryption codes in 3 days. Craig was young, maybe 25, with messy brown hair and a talent for seeing patterns in data. He had been recruited from a tech company and given access to quantum computers that made his old equipment look like stone tools. Their security is good, Craig admitted, but it's designed to stop other aliens. They all think the same way, use the same logical approaches. We think different. We break their systems from angles they never expected. Once inside the network, the human team did something simple but devastating. They uploaded raw combat footage from the battles, not propaganda, not edited, just pure recordings showing how easily human weapons had torn through Zephyr ships. The footage spread through the galactic network like a virus. Every species in the galaxy saw what happened when the Zephyr Collective's warships met human weapons. They saw ships explode from the inside. They saw shields fail against weapons that bypassed them entirely. They saw a major military power humiliated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Dr. Patricia Cole monitored the alien reactions from Earth. She had spent years studying alien psychology, learning how different species thought. Now that knowledge became a weapon. Most spacefaring species evolved from prey animals or herd creatures, she explained in a briefing. They're wired for cooperation and submission to authority. When they see overwhelming force, their instinct is to submit. Humans evolved as hunters. When we see a threat, our instinct is to fight. That psychological difference is our advantage. The predictions proved correct. Within 2 weeks, 17 species withdrew from the Zephyr Collective's military alliance. They sent diplomatic messages to Earth declaring neutrality and requesting peace. They had seen enough. But the Zephyr leadership refused to accept reality. Their council met in emergency session. Ambassador Veloth, the same bird-lizard creature who had rejected humanity's demands, stood before his peers. We cannot show weakness, Veloth insisted. If we back down now, every minor species in the galaxy will think they can challenge us. We must mobilize our full military strength and crush these humans completely. The Zephyr Grand Fleet began to gather, 3,000 warships pulled from outposts across their territory. It was the largest military force they had assembled in 2 centuries. The target was clear, Earth itself. They would strike at the human homeworld and end this war decisively. Admiral Kevin Brooks received the intelligence report on his command ship orbiting Earth. He read it carefully, then called a meeting with his senior officers. They're coming here, he said simply. 3,000 ships. They want to hit us at home, make an example of us. The officers stirred nervously. 3,000 ships was a terrifying number. Even with their advanced weapons, could humanity stop that many enemies? Kevin smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Good, I was hoping they'd do something stupid. They want to attack our home. Let them. Let them see what we've prepared for exactly this scenario. He activated a display showing the solar system. Every planet, every moon, The Zephyr Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of angry insects. 3,000 warships, each one the size of a skyscraper, carrying enough firepower to level continents. Fleet Commander Zelenth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, and looked at the sensor readings of the human home system. Primitive, he said to his officers. Look at their technology. Chemical rockets. Simple satellites. They've barely left their own planet. This will be over quickly. What Zelenth didn't know was that his sensors were showing him exactly what humanity wanted him to see. The obvious satellites and stations were real, but they were bait. The real defenses were hidden, waiting. On Earth, Admiral Kevin Brooks watched the enemy fleet appear on his tactical display. He sat in a command center buried deep under the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by holographic screens showing every part of the solar system. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the defense. They're here, Kevin said calmly. Activate the perimeter. Throughout the outer solar system, millions of dormant objects came to life. What had looked like ice chunks, debris, and rocks revealed themselves to be combat drones. Each one was small, no bigger than a car, but packed with sensors, weapons, and a simple AI programmed for one purpose: kill anything that wasn't human. The drones began to move, forming a vast net across space. They didn't cluster together. Instead, they spread out in a pattern that looked random, but was actually precisely calculated. Any ship trying to pass through would find itself surrounded, attacked from every direction at once. Fleet Commander Zelenth saw his sensor screen suddenly fill with contacts. Thousands of them, then tens of thousands, then millions. "What is that?" he demanded. His tactical officer looked confused. "Unknown, Commander. They're small, fast, and there are too many to count. They're forming a defensive perimeter around the inner system. Destroy them," Zelenth ordered. "All ships fire at will." The Zephyr fleet opened up with their energy weapons. Beams of concentrated plasma lanced out across space, hitting the human drones. Hundreds exploded. But for every drone destroyed, 10 more moved into position. And now they started firing back. The drones didn't use energy weapons. They used simple kinetic impactors, chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. Against shields designed to stop energy weapons, the kinetic rounds punched through like bullets through paper. Zephyr ships started taking damage, their hulls punctured by projectiles moving at thousands of miles per second. Captain Megan Walsh commanded the carrier USS Bastion from its position near Mars. Her ship carried 200 smaller fighters, each one piloted by a human with years of training. She watched the battle at the system's edge and waited for her moment. "Stay ready," she told her pilots. "Let the drones do their work. We'll hit them when they're confused and scattered." The Zephyr fleet tried to advance through the drone swarm. It was like trying to march through a cloud of angry bees. If each bee was made of metal and carried a railgun, ships exploded as multiple drones converged on them. Others were crippled, their engines destroyed, left drifting helplessly. Commander Zelenth realized his mistake. This wasn't a primitive species. This was a trap, carefully prepared and perfectly executed. "Pull back to the outer perimeter," he ordered. "Reform the fleet. We'll advance in tight formation." But pulling back wasn't so simple. The drones followed, harassing the fleet constantly. Every time a ship slowed down or fell behind, the drones swarmed it. The Zephyr forces lost 200 ships just trying to retreat and regroup. Captain Jake Martinez led his squadron of stealth frigates around the enemy's flank. His ships, invisible to sensors, moved through space like ghosts. He watched the alien fleet struggle against the drones and smiled coldly. "This is Phantom Leader," he said over the command channel. "We're in position. Beginning our attack run." The stealth ships emerged from hiding among Saturn's rings. They fired their quantum displacement torpedoes at point-blank range, targeting the Zephyr command ships. The torpedoes didn't just explode. They created brief rifts in space-time, tearing holes in reality itself. Ships caught in the blast didn't just die. They ceased to exist, erased from the universe along with everything nearby. The effect was devastating. Each torpedo destroyed its target and damaged everything within a quarter-mile radius. The Zephyr fleet's tight formation, meant to provide mutual support, instead became a liability. Cascading explosions rippled through their ranks. Dr. Nathan Clark watched from the research station on Mars. He had helped develop the quantum displacement weapons, and now he saw them used in combat for the first time. The data was both fascinating and horrifying. Each detonation created a tiny bubble where the laws of physics went temporarily insane. Matter and energy swirled together and annihilated each other. "The damage multiplier is even better than we calculated," Nathan reported to Admiral Brooks. "When they cluster their ships together, each torpedo is taking out multiple targets." "Good," Kevin replied. "Keep monitoring. If anything goes wrong with those weapons, I need to know immediately." Commander Zelenth's fleet was in chaos. They had expected an easy fight. Instead, they were being torn apart by weapons they didn't understand and couldn't counter. His communication officers reported that 17 ships had lost contact, presumed destroyed. Another 40 were heavily damaged. "We need to push through," Zelenth insisted. "We still outnumber them. Once we reach their planet, we can bombard it into submission." His second-in-command, a younger officer named Korath, looked doubtful. "Commander, our losses are mounting. Perhaps we should reconsider." "No," Zelenth said firmly. "The Galactic Council is watching. We cannot show weakness. All ships full speed ahead. Break through their defenses." The Zephyr fleet surged forward. They pushed past the drone swarms, taking heavy losses but making progress. They fought their way through the outer system, past Neptune, past Uranus, heading for the inner planets where Earth waited. That's when they encountered the next layer of defense. Jupiter loomed ahead, the largest planet in the solar system. The Zephyr fleet planned to swing past it, using its gravity to help accelerate toward Earth. But as they approached, they discovered that humans had been very busy around the gas giant, hidden in Jupiter's radiation belts, protected from sensors by the intense electromagnetic fields, waited 20 heavy cruisers. They were larger than the stealth frigates, carrying massive railguns that could fire projectiles the size of buses. Commander Tyler Green led the ambush. He was a tactical genius who had studied every famous battle in human history. Now he put that knowledge to use. "Wait until they're committed to the gravity assist," Tyler ordered his captains. "They'll be moving fast, following predictable paths. That's when we hit them." The Zephyr fleet began its maneuver around Jupiter. The planet's immense gravity pulled them into a curved path, accelerating them toward the inner system. They were moving at tremendous speed, unable to change course quickly. "Now," Tyler said. The human cruisers emerged from the radiation belts and opened fire. Their railguns launched projectiles at relativistic speeds. The kinetic energy was enormous. When a railgun slug hit a Zephyr ship, it didn't just punch through the hull. It went clean through the entire vessel, creating a tunnel of destruction from one side to the other. The alien fleet tried to return fire, but they were moving too fast, their targeting systems disrupted by Jupiter's powerful magnetic fields. The human ships, intimately familiar with their own home system, had positioned themselves perfectly. They fired, repositioned, and fired again, using Jupiter's moons for cover. In 15 minutes of brutal combat, the Zephyr fleet lost another 300 ships. Commander Zealanth watched his tactical display in disbelief as contact after contact winked out of existence. His mighty armada, the pride of the Zephyr Collective, was being destroyed piecemeal by an enemy that seemed to know every trick, every ambush point, every tactical advantage. "Status report," Zealanth demanded. His tactical officer's voice shook. "We've lost over 600 ships, Commander. 20% of our fleet. Damage estimates on surviving vessels range from minor to critical. The enemy is using tactics we've never encountered. They're not fighting fair." "War isn't fair," Zealanth snapped. But inside he felt the first touch of fear. These humans didn't fight like civilized species. They didn't follow the accepted rules of engagement. They fought like predators, using every advantage, showing no mercy. The surviving Zephyr ships pushed on, past Jupiter, heading deeper into the solar system. They encountered more drones near the asteroid belt. Human ships appeared from behind asteroids, fired and retreated before the aliens could respond effectively. Each engagement cost Zealanth more ships, more lives, more of his fleet's combat effectiveness. By the time the Zephyr force reached Mars, they had lost nearly half their original strength. 1,500 ships remained, still a formidable force, but they were battered, disorganized, and exhausted from constant combat. Vice Admiral Nicole Grant watched them approach from her command post on the defense station orbiting Earth. Around her planet, the final layer of defense waited. Orbital platforms bristling with weapons, fighter squadrons ready to launch, and one more surprise that the enemy hadn't seen yet. Let them come a little closer. 3 days after the battle, Commander Zealanth sat in what remained of his flagship and wrote his report. His hands shook as he documented the worst military defeat in Zephyr history. Of the 3,000 ships that had entered the human home system, only 683 had escaped. Nearly 2,000 ships destroyed along with their crews. Tens of thousands dead. The report would end his career, possibly end his life, but he had to tell the truth. They turned their entire star system into a weapon, he wrote. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid was part of a coordinated defense network. They knew we were coming. They prepared for us, and they destroyed us with tactics we had never encountered. The humans fight like nothing we have ever faced before. On Earth, President Helen Morrison addressed the world. She stood in the rebuilt White House looking tired but determined. Behind her, holographic displays showed images from the battle. Not propaganda, just simple facts and numbers. "We have won a great victory," Helen said. "But this war is not over. The Zephyr Collective still holds 3,000 of our people hostage. They still claim authority over us. They still threaten our right to exist. So now we move to the next phase. She paused, letting her words sink in. We will not invade their worlds. We will not conquer their territory. We will not become the monsters they tried to make us. But we will make them understand that holding our people has a cost they cannot afford to pay. Admiral Kevin Brooks was already implementing the next stage of the plan. While the Zephyr Collective reeled from their defeat at Sol, human strike forces launched attacks across their territory. Not random attacks. Carefully targeted operations designed to hurt them economically and psychologically. Captain Ryan Foster led his squadron to a Zephyr industrial complex in the Sigma Draconis system. The complex manufactured everything from computer components to ship parts. It was vital to their economy. Ryan's ships didn't destroy the complex. That would have been too simple. Instead, they deployed nanites, trillions of microscopic machines programmed to infiltrate the manufacturing equipment and replicate themselves. The nanites would lie dormant, hiding in the machinery, waiting. They might activate tomorrow or next month or next year, Ryan explained to his crew, or they might never activate at all. But now every ship built in this facility, every component manufactured here carries that uncertainty. Would you trust a ship that might fall apart mid-flight? Would you trust equipment that might fail at a critical moment? The psychological impact was devastating. The Zephyr Collective couldn't simply abandon their largest industrial complex, but they also couldn't trust anything it produced. They had to tear everything down, examine every piece of machinery, rebuild from scratch. It would take years and cost billions. Similar operations happened throughout Zephyr space. Lieutenant Grace Palmer, working in the intelligence division, monitored their communications and watched the panic spread. The Zephyr economy was grinding to a halt as trust in their infrastructure collapsed. They're terrified, Grace reported, not just of us attacking, of their own systems failing, of not knowing what's safe and what's been compromised. Fear is more effective than bombs. Commander Alex Turner and his hacker team took control of 3 more communication satellites. They broadcast messages throughout the galaxy, not to the Zephyr leadership but to their ordinary citizens. The messages were simple and direct. Your government took human civilians. They treated them like animals. They threatened genocide. Then they attacked Earth and lost over 2,000 ships. Is this leadership worth following? Is this war worth fighting? Craig Peterson, the young hacker leading the technical work, smiled as he watched the messages spread. Civil disobedience is a human concept, he said. Most aliens don't have our history of revolution and protest. But they're learning fast. We're teaching them that governments aren't infallible, that authority can be questioned. The Galactic Council met an emergency session. The chamber was vast, designed to hold representatives from hundreds of species. Now it felt smaller, more cramped as fear filled the air. Ambassador Veloth of the Zephyr Collective stood before his peers, trying to maintain dignity while his civilization crumbled. The humans must be stopped, Veloth insisted. They are disrupting the entire galactic order. They refuse to accept council authority. They use weapons that violate every civilized norm. If we allow this to continue, chaos will spread. But the other species were no longer listening to the Zephyr. They had watched the Battle of Sol. They had seen a major military power humiliated. They had calculated the odds and reached an obvious conclusion. Fighting humanity was suicide. Ambassador Krell of the Korthan Federation spoke for many when he said, "Perhaps the Zephyr Collective should have considered the consequences before taking human civilians. Perhaps we all should have been more careful before claiming authority over a species that never accepted it." The debate raged for 3 days. Some species argued for continued confrontation. Others demanded peace. A few suggested that maybe, just maybe, the Galactic Council's authority wasn't as absolute as they had always claimed. Meanwhile, humanity continued its campaign. Not just military operations, they were positioning assets throughout the galaxy. Strike fleets near major trade routes, stealth ships in orbit around important worlds, kinetic bombardment platforms hidden in asteroid belts. Dr. Patricia Cole briefed the president on their strategic situation. "We've established a military presence in 17 systems," she said. "We can strike any major target in the galaxy within hours. More importantly, everyone knows we can do it. That knowledge is our real weapon." "Will they give us our people back?" Helen asked. Patricia hesitated. The Zephyr leadership is stubborn, but they're also facing internal pressure. Their economy is failing. Their military is demoralized. Their citizens are questioning whether this war is worth fighting. I think they'll break. The question is when. The answer came 2 weeks after the Battle of Sol. A new message arrived from the Zephyr Collective. This time it wasn't Ambassador Veloth speaking. It was someone older with more authority. Supreme Director Harkon, the highest leader of the Zephyr civilization. Harkon looked tired. His blue scales seemed duller, his golden eyes less bright. When he spoke, his voice lacked the arrogant certainty that had characterized earlier Zephyr communications. Humanity. Harkon said slowly, "We have reconsidered our position. The Galactic Council has reviewed the situation and determined that errors were made in the handling of your species. The human civilians taken from Kepler 442b will be returned unharmed. We also propose negotiations to establish formal diplomatic relations." President Helen Morrison watched the message with Admiral Kevin Brooks and General Paul Richardson. When it ended, the room was silent for a moment. "Is it a trap?" Paul asked. "Maybe," Kevin said, "but I don't think so. We've hurt them badly. They've lost ships, infrastructure, and credibility. Their own citizens are turning against the leadership. They need a way out." Helen nodded slowly. "We'll negotiate, but on our terms, and our people come home first before we discuss anything else." The exchange happened in neutral space, a location halfway between Earth and Zephyr territory. Admiral Nicole Grant commanded the human fleet that went to collect their citizens. She took no chances. 200 ships fully armed, ready for treachery. The Zephyr ships that arrived were nervous. Their commanders kept their weapons powered down, their shields at minimum, showing every sign of non-aggression. They knew that if this went wrong, they were all dead. Captain Jake Martinez was part of the boarding team that went to verify the colonists were actually there and unharmed. He walked through the alien ship with his hand never far from his weapon. The Zephyr crew members he passed looked scared, which was appropriate. They should be scared. He found the humans in what had clearly been holding cells, though the aliens had tried to make them more comfortable in recent days. 3,000 men, women, and children. Some crying, some angry, all alive. Dr. Leonard Hayes examined them immediately. "They've been treated like laboratory animals," he reported grimly. "Medical procedures, psychological tests, constant observation, but no permanent harm. They're healthy enough to travel." The colonists were transferred to human ships. The reunion was emotional. Families embraced. Tears flowed. But underneath the relief was anger. These people had been stolen from their homes, treated like specimens, held captive while empires debated their fate. Jake stood with Sophie Davis and watched the last colonist board the human transport. "We got them back," Sophie said quietly. "Yes," Jake agreed. "But they'll remember this. All of humanity will remember what the Zephyr Collective did. The galaxy tried to treat us like we don't matter. That was their mistake." The diplomatic negotiations began the following week. The venue was a space station in neutral territory, specially built for the occasion. On one side, the human delegation led by Ambassador Victoria Kane. On the other, representatives from the Galactic Council, including the Zephyr Collective. Victoria was a former military officer turned diplomat. She knew how to negotiate from strength. She sat across from Ambassador Veloth and several other alien representatives and laid out humanity's demands. First, formal recognition of human sovereignty and territorial claims. Second, immediate cessation of all claims to. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Ambassador Victoria Kane walked into the Galactic Council chamber for the first time as an official member. The room was enormous, a circular space with seats arranged in tiers, each one occupied by a representative from a different species. Thousands of eyes in dozens of different forms watched her enter. She walked to the new human seat, positioned prominently near the center of the chamber. The seat had been added hastily, and it didn't quite match the others. That was fine. Humanity hadn't come here to fit in. They had come here to make sure they were never ignored again. Supreme Arbiter Zelkoth, an ancient being from a species that had been spacefaring for 10,000 years, called the session to order. His voice was old and tired, weighted with the knowledge that his comfortable world had changed forever. "We recognize the representative from Earth," Zelkoth said formally. "Ambassador Kane, you may address the council." Victoria stood. She looked around at the assembled aliens, seeing fear in some faces, anger in others, and calculation in most. They were wondering what humanity would do with their newfound power. It was time to show them. "Thank you, Arbiter," Victoria said. Her voice was clear and strong, amplified throughout the chamber. I'm here today to establish what humanity expects from this council and what we will and will not accept going forward. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing human worlds, both in the Sol system and the colonies that had been established in recent years. These are human territories. They are sovereign and will remain so. Any attempt to claim authority over these systems will be considered an act of war. Any attempt to restrict human expansion will be rejected. We will go where we wish, when we wish. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Several representatives started to object, but Victoria kept speaking. However, we're not here to conquer. We're not interested in ruling over other species. We simply demand the same rights that every other species in this chamber enjoys. The right to exist, to grow, to defend ourselves. The right to be treated as equals, not as subjects. She changed the display. Now it showed the weapons that humanity had deployed throughout the galaxy. Strike forces, stealth ships, kinetic platforms. A reminder of what had happened to the Zephyr Collective when they had crossed humanity's line. These assets will remain in place indefinitely, Victoria continued. Not as a threat, but as a promise. If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. If you trade fairly with us, we'll trade fairly with you. But if you threaten us, if you try to harm our people or restrict our rights, you'll face consequences that I promise you won't enjoy. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species protested that humanity was being too aggressive, too demanding. Others quietly nodded, understanding that the galaxy had changed and there was no going back. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The returned colonists from Kepler 442b were recovering, though the psychological scars would take time to heal. Dr. Leonard Hayes worked with a team of therapists to help them process what had happened. They're angry, Leonard reported to President Helen Morrison, and that anger is spreading. The whole planet watched as our people were taken and held hostage. Everyone understands now that we're not alone in the universe and not everyone out there is friendly. Helen nodded. Use that anger. Channel it into something productive. We need more ships, more weapons, more colonies. We need to grow strong enough that this never happens again. The military buildup continued. Admiral Kevin Brooks oversaw the expansion of the fleet. New shipyards were built beyond Neptune, hidden from casual observation. The Wraith-class stealth frigates that had proven so effective were mass-produced. Even more advanced designs were being developed in classified facilities. But humanity was also reaching out peacefully to other species. Captain Megan Walsh commanded a diplomatic vessel that visited worlds interested in establishing trade with Earth. Many species were eager to deal with humans, seeing opportunities for profit and alliance. They're scared of us, Megan reported after a tour of several systems, but they also respect us now. Some of them want our protection. Others want our technology. They're treating us like a major power because we proved we are one. Commander Jake Martinez received a promotion to Admiral and was given command of the Frontier Fleet, responsible for protecting human colonies and exploring new systems. He stood on the bridge of his new flagship looking at the stars, thinking about how much had changed in less than a year. Sophie Davis, now his second-in-command, joined him at the viewing port. "Do you think we'll have peace now?" she asked. Jake considered the question. "For a while." The galaxy learned a lesson. But lessons fade over time. Eventually, some other species will decide they're strong enough to challenge us. Or some threat we haven't encountered yet will show up. Peace isn't permanent. It's something you have to defend constantly. The Zephyr Collective was slowly rebuilding, though they would never be the same. Supreme Director Harkon had stepped down, replaced by younger leadership that understood the new reality. They sent diplomatic messages to Earth, seeking to establish normal relations. To move past the conflict, Commander Zelenth, the officer who had led the failed attack on Sul, was not executed as many had expected. Instead, he was assigned to teach at the Zephyr Military Academy. His job was simple: make sure the next generation understood what happens when you underestimate an enemy. In his first lecture to new cadets, Zelenth displayed footage from the Battle of Sol. He showed them how the Zephyr fleet had been destroyed, how every assumption they had made about humans had been wrong. "We thought they were primitive," Zelenth told his students. "We thought their technology was inferior. We thought they would submit to our authority like every other species. We were wrong about everything. Learn from this. Never assume you understand your enemy. Never assume victory is certain. and never ever threaten a species unless you're prepared to face the consequences. On Earth, the government began a massive education program. Every school taught students about the galaxy, about other species, about the dangers of space. But they also taught them about humanity's response to those dangers. About how humans had refused to submit, had fought back, had won. Craig Peterson, the young hacker who had helped break the alien communication networks, found himself teaching classes on electronic warfare at military academies. He tried to explain to his students how humans thought differently than most aliens. They're logical, predictable, conventional, Craig said. We're creative, chaotic, willing to try things that seem crazy. That's our advantage. They follow rules. We make new rules. Never forget that. Dr. Patricia Cole published a book about the psychological aspects of the conflict. It became required reading for diplomats and military officers throughout human space. Her central thesis was simple. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or technology. It was their willingness to do whatever it took to survive. Most spacefaring species evolved from prey animals, Patricia wrote. They're wired to submit to predators, to accept their place in the hierarchy. Humans evolved as predators. We're wired to fight, to persist, to never give up. That fundamental difference meant the galaxy couldn't understand us. They tried to treat us like all their other subjects. It was a fatal mistake. 2 years after the initial incident, the Kepler 442b colony was rebuilt and thriving. The colonists who had been taken returned to find their homes preserved, and new settlers joining them. The colony became a symbol of human resilience, a reminder of what they had survived. Jake Martinez visited the colony on the 2nd anniversary of its founding. He walked through streets that had once been empty, now filled with people and life. Children played in parks. Markets bustled with activity. It looked like any human settlement, peaceful and normal, but above the colony in orbit, defense platforms watched constantly. And beyond the system's edge, a squadron of warships stood ready. The colony was defended now. Every human settlement was defended. Never again would they be vulnerable. Admiral Nicole Grant retired from active military service and took a position teaching strategy at the Naval Academy. In her first lecture, she showed her students the tactical display from the Battle of Saul, walking them through every decision, every move. We won because we prepared, Nicole told them. We won because we understood our advantages and exploited them ruthlessly. We won because we were willing to do things the enemy didn't expect. But most importantly, we won because we refused to accept defeat. Remember that. Humans don't surrender. We don't give up. We find a way to win no matter what it takes. In the Galactic Council, humanity's presence changed everything. Ambassador Victoria Kane used Earth's veto power sparingly but effectively. When the Council tried to pass regulations that would have limited human expansion, she vetoed them. When they tried to establish rules about weapon development, she reminded them that humanity had never agreed to the Preservation Accords. We'll cooperate when it serves mutual interests, Victoria told the Council, but we won't be restricted by rules we had no part in creating. You tried to impose your will on us once. It didn't work out well for you. Let's not repeat that mistake. Other species began to follow humanity's example. Smaller civilizations that had always submitted to Council authority started